want to get into the details of the tweets yesterday and the potential process or not in a second, but having been president of the New York Stock Exchange, what is your view on the fact that he wants to take the company private at all? Can you understand his rationale for that? Is it too onerous today to be a public company?
You know, I looked at the tweets through the lens of somebody who had run the New York Stock Exchange as a former regulator, and I was appalled at the way it was communicated. I mean, the first tweet said, considering $420, so far so good. Then there was secured, the funding is secured. I'm even willing to say that maybe his definition of funding secured is a little different than the man on the street. It's not going to be, at this point, signed and secured, but I think maybe he's saying, hey, I have some people who are interested. But then he sent a follow-on tweet that said, the only reason it isn't certain is because it requires a shareholder vote. So he's saying the funding is not only secured, it's certain. I think that that's a bit outlandish, and as a former regulator, first thing I would have done is said, geez, are they running afoul of any rules here? And I'm certain the SEC is asking the same question.
Asking the same question and likely, therefore, to investigate.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, the SEC opens a lot of investigations, and I could be wrong. There could be secured funding. I think there's one prospective equity check in the world. It's the Saudis. And if the Saudis stepped up and told Elon yesterday, hey, I'll write a $40 billion check, I could be wrong. I think that is very much a long shot.
You dealt with the Saudis a lot because you were trying to entice them to list Aramco here. Do you think it's likely they could be the potential cash source for Elon Musk? I do not. You're right. I spent 15 nights in the kingdom last year, including with the people who hold the purse strings, and I do not think it is likely. However, I will say they are enamored with high technology. They're a big backer of SoftBank. They are an investor in Tesla, so it's not impossible. And that's the one long shot here. But I think it's incumbent upon Elon Musk to actually share that with the public, because if it's not accurate, I feel bad for the people who went and bought the stock yesterday at $370, hoping it goes to $420. If it turns out it's not true and it goes back to $350, that undermines confidence in the market, and it's just plain wrong.
If his stock were listed here and you were still in charge, pretend that happens. That goes out. What do? Do you call him?
I would have picked up the phone to our head of regulatory. I stayed hands off on regulatory matters, but I would have picked up the phone and said, hey, this looks odd to me. I just want to make sure you're aware of it.
The news pending?
Immediately. I would have done that immediately.
Did the NASDAQ likely impose that on them?
Yes. The NASDAQ likely imposed. The NASDAQ picked up the phone likely and called Tesla and said, hey, what's going on here? You need to disclose more information. You haven't disclosed enough information, halted the stock. That forced Tesla to come out with more information, the blog post. And ultimately, that's a good thing. You saw a smooth, steady reopening of the stock, but that should have happened before this tweet in the middle of the day. There are investors, there are retail investors here that you have to worry about.
In this one in particular.
People may not feel great about short sellers. There is a place for short sellers in this market. They help close spreads. They help provide a lesser cost of capital. And just because you want to see them hurt, that in and of itself is not a reason to communicate poorly with the market.
I want to switch focus, Tom, and talk about trade, because you just mentioned in the break that you've spoken to quite a few of the CEOs that were at the dinner with the president last night. What was their response in terms of sort of how concerned they are about the president's strategy, or whether he managed to calm them?
Yeah, I spoke to 3 of the CEOs who were at the dinner last night. There was about a dozen CEOs out at his golf course in New Jersey. It was a 4-hour dinner. They covered a range of topics: immigration, healthcare costs. The one that was most interesting to me was trade, not surprisingly. And the new information for me was there was actually a group of CEOs in this meeting who were saying, things are going really well here. We have the tax cuts, unemployment down very, very, very low, asset prices all-time high. Mr. President, now is the time to play tough on trade. Hold the line.
So behind closed doors, they told him that, because in public, nobody's saying that.
Yes, but let me be clear, Michelle. It wasn't unanimity. But there was a group that was advocating that strategy. And that's, I suspect, what the president wants to hear. If you look at the politics, I think he's going to look to get a deal with Mexico very soon, before the midterms. Ideally, the EU, likely not Canada. And then China will be the boogeyman. He'll keep going after China. You'll see China continue to struggle, and the idea will be, can we get a big trade deal prior to his next re-election?
How big is your SPAC? You want to help Elon take the company public? I mean?
No, in fact, I wish I were a shareholder and I could say yes to 420 shares. Leslie's reporting was very good on this Tesla deal. I think it is ridiculous that shareholders will roll and they'll say, oh, yeah, no, I don't want to sell for 420. Give me an illiquid private stock.
Let's just quickly talk about your new venture. You want to focus on fintech names.
Yeah.
Why now for that? I mean, if I look at that industry, I'd say banks have actually had time to catch up because they weren't disrupted as much as, say, retail was by Amazon, and the banks are offering genuine competitors to the new innovative companies. Do you think that's a wrong framing of this, that what you're going to invest in is going to really disrupt the JP Morgans of this world?
Well, the answer is really simple. One is what I know. So if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I started at age 21 in the world of financial technology. Two, it's doing incredibly well all across the world, whether you look at the Ant Financials or here at home with the PayPals, the Visas. FinTech is changing every single industry around the world, and the growth is extraordinary. And I'm looking for really great businesses that I can improve even a little bit, but ride the tailwinds of financial technology for a great return for my investors.
When you find some companies to buy, will you tweet about the decisions, the prices, or will it be?
Well, I may, but I won't do it in the middle of the day with an incomplete tweet, because that isn't fair.